Namaste, Green Wave. It's Miss Amy. And today we are mindfully going to cook with vegetables from my garden. And we are going to make our own minestrone vegetable soup using a lot of the tomatoes that my dad has grown in the garden as the soup base. And we're also going to make pesto, which is made from the herb basil, because I have a lot of basil growing in my garden that you can make your own fresh pesto. So we are mindfully going to make those meals today. Again, maybe you try this at home along with me, or you're welcome to, Google a recipe that's similar, because I'm going to combine a vegetable soup and a lentil soup together to create my own soup. So ingredients that I'm going to use are quinoa. Again, that is a great grain. Again, this is all going to be healthy for our body, healthy for our mind. I'm going to cook the whole green lentils. I'm going to add in some macaroni. We're going to use the ditalini macaroni. And we're also going to add in the chickpeas and the kidney beans, so for extra plant protein. But first, before I start cutting up all of the vegetables, because we're going to add in some eggplants, some different types of peppers, homegrown onions and carrots. I'm going to show you all the vegetables, but we need to boil the water for the lentils, the quinoa, and the macaroni first. So that is cooking while we wash and cut all the vegetables. So following the directions on the lentil package, it says cooking instructions: rinse lentils with cold water before cooking. Lentils require no soaking. Stovetop, use a large saucepan as lentils can triple in size. Combine 3 cups of water with 1 cup of lentils and bring to a boil. So I'm going to measure 3 cups of water and pour it in the pot and put that on the stove first. Here is our 1 cup of lentils, and this is what the lentils look like before they are cooked. These are dried lentils. And I measured 3 cups of water. So I poured 3 cups of this, because this is 1 cup, into the pot. And now I'm going to pour the lentils in here. And then I'm going to put it on the stove, and following the directions on the package, it says to reduce heat, cover tightly, and simmer until desired tenderness, approximately 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm gonna have that start to boil on the stove. And here is the 1 cup of quinoa. Again, we can mindfully notice the difference between the uncooked quinoa and when it is cooked. And I poured 2 cups of water. Again, I was following the directions on the package. And we're going to pour 1 cup of quinoa in our 2 cups of water. So again, I'm going to mindfully pour that all in. And we'll put that back on the stove. The last pot is going to be for the macaroni, the ditalini. So again, we can mindfully notice the difference of uncooked pasta before it's cooked, and then after when it is cooked. So following the directions on the box, I'm just doing 1 cup, so I cut it in half. So, I followed the directions to cut the amount in half, so it's equal pasta, lentils, and the quinoa. So I'm going to pour this in the pot so it will start to cook on the stove. And then we will get our veggies ready, because that is the next step to making the base, the broth of our soup, by cutting up the tomatoes. So before I cut up the tomatoes, I'm going to show you all of the vegetables, because I'm going to have to move all the veggies to set up my cutting board to cut the tomatoes, because once you cut them up and you heat them up on the stove, and we're going to add some sunflower oil. We're going to add sunflower oil. We're going to add ghee and organic coconut avocado oil blend, a vegan ghee alternative, to give our soup a lot of flavor. So we're going to mix up all of these carrier oils to just give our healthy soup some, more flavors, which will be really yummy. I love things with flavor to it. So we're going to do that. So other veggies that, again, these are all grown from my garden, freshly picked. We have some eggplants, different shapes and sizes. So we can notice, again, practicing mindfulness. This is an eggplant. This is an eggplant. This is an eggplant. So we can compare and contrast. We can notice the texture. We can notice the color. We can notice the smells. So I love eggplants, and we're going to add that to our soup today. So I'm going to have to wash these and, cut these up. We also have a variety of peppers. So just to show you, and I picked it right from the vine. We have this pepper. This is known as a bell pepper. So it's a little darker green. Then I don't really know the names of these peppers, but they're other green peppers. So again, we can practice mindfulness just by noticing they're all the same vegetable, but a different type. So again, these are grown right in my garden, noticing the different colors. So there's, again, some more peppers here that we can notice. So I'm also going to cut these up for our veggie soup. I also have here homegrown carrots. So before we cut these up, I actually have to wash them outside because the dirt is going to clog up my sink here. So these were just picked from the ground because carrots are root veggies. So you can see how long the stem is of the carrot. Again, this is picked right from my backyard. We can notice what it smells like. It doesn't really have much of a smell to it, but it's pretty cool. So as you can see, all the dirt, when I wash this off outside with the hose, I'm gonna have to cut off the stem. So just to show you a couple more carrots. Again, this one was hard to dig out from the ground, but again, see all that dirt because carrots, they come from the earth. They are that root vegetable. So this is as fresh, as organic as you're gonna get. These other carrots I had picked the other day and I cut and washed. So just to show you, these are yellow carrots, but they also had the stem. But again, I cut the stem off so you can notice the difference. And again, I'll rewash these and cut them up. So we'll have a variety of carrots in our soup. We also grow onions. So these onions were picked again from the earth. So they still have the dirt on them. So again, I'm going to clean these off before I cook them, just like the onions you buy in the store. These are fresh and organic. And I have some more that were, again, right from the earth, right? This is how onions are picked, right from the dirt. And, before they get sent to the grocery store, they have to be cleaned up. So again, just being mindful of the whole process of where our fruits and our vegetables come from. They just don't end up automatically on our plate. There's a whole process of the farmers that took the time to plant the seeds, to water, to nurture and nourish the plants, plus Mother Nature with the sun and the rain and the wind. And then the people that picked the fruits and the vegetables, got them ready to be sent on a truck to the grocery store workers that put them on the shelf, the cashier that rang up your groceries, your family that bought your groceries. So a lot goes into where our food comes from. And that's a great yoga practice to be aware, to be mindful of where our food is coming from. And it's another practice in Ayurveda to really care about the process of cooking, to really, you are what you eat. So to really put your compassion, your love, your kindness into your meal. And that's what we're doing today is this, yoga food, as I like to call it. So again, onions right from the earth. Again, I'm gonna have to wash them off outside with the hose. Then some other onions. This one was already washed off and was in my refrigerator. And again, another one right from the earth. So these are the onions. And then all different shapes and sizes of the tomatoes. So I'm gonna use the ones that are the most ripe, the most red, and they're also that squishy feel to it. Whereas you can compare and contrast this one, the bottom is ripening, but the top is still hard. So this one isn't ready yet. This one I will keep on my windowsill to get some more sun, because sometimes if you leave the tomatoes out there for too long, the groundhogs, the bunnies, they start to eat the veggies. So it's a trick of letting nature, let the fruit and the food ripen. But then also the animals in nature also are hungry too. So this one I'm probably not going to use because it's a little bit more firm. So the tomatoes that I'm going to use today, I'm going to, squish around in my hand. I'm going to notice the color because I want the juicy ones that are really ripe, because that's going to make the liquid part of our soup. And then while this is all cooking, after I cut up everything, we're also going to make our homemade pesto, which it is made from the basil plant. So I picked these before, and again, I'm going to wash these off before I put them in the blender. And basil is also an essential oil. Again, mine aren't going to turn into oils, but this is where the basil oil comes from. It comes from the basil plant. It smells really good. You might be familiar with the smell from pasta sauces, from pizza. So we're going to make pesto, and we're going to mix it with the oil. We're going to add in the onions. I have some garlic powder, and we're also going to use our other essential oils that we can cook with our black pepper, our cumin. We're going to add in some ginger. So remember, only the Young Living brand is the only brand you can cook with. Okay, so always be mindful of that. And usually in traditional pestos, you use pine nuts. Pine nuts can be really expensive, and I don't have pine nuts at home with me, but I have the almond meal, which is almonds that are already smushed up. So I'm going to substitute the almond meal instead of my pine nuts. So it's still a nut based. Of course, if I was allergic to nuts, I wouldn't use that. Okay, so always be aware of whom you're cooking for. And all of this is going to be for myself, so I don't have any nut allergies, so it'll be okay. So those are all of the vegetables right from my backyard. And now I'm going to set up to show you how I'm going to cut up the tomatoes and then add in the oils, the carrier oils, and our spices to let it all simmer. And then we'll cut up the other veggies and add it in. And while that all is on the stove, we'll make our pesto, and our quinoa, lentils, and macaroni are still boiling. As they say, the latch pot never boils. So we're giving them time to boil to make our soup. So as I'm about to cut up these tomatoes, I put the ghee on the stove because ghee is a solid. It looks just like this, almost like yellow glue. So I want it to heat up. So I'm gonna add another thing of the ghee, because again, we wanna make it into a soup. We're gonna cook all of our veggies in the ghee. And then I'm also going to add in, again, just for more flavor, the vegan ghee. So this is mixed with coconut oil and avocado oil. It would be a solid, but because it's a warm day out, it's already a liquid. I don't know why the other ghee is still a solid, but I'm going to add in some of the avocado coconut oil ghee. Because remember, coconut oil is good for our body, good for our joints. And then I'm also going to add in some of the sunflower oil as well. So again, we're making the base of our soup, because not only will this saute the tomatoes, but after I cut these up, we're going to cut the eggplant, we're going to cut the peppers, we're going to cut the carrots and the onions. So they're all going to simmer together, and we're going to add in our spices to give our soup flavor. And our pasta and our lentils and our quinoa are still cooking as well. So what I'm gonna do here, we're gonna turn off that flame, make sure all of these are on a lower flame as we are multitasking. And always be careful when you're cutting, especially when you're using a knife. Always make sure an adult is around. And I am just gonna start by cutting off the stems. And I will use the, the parts around the stem so we don't waste. So I'm just cutting this up into different chunks because again, you can see how juicy the tomato is. It's gonna make the broth of our soup. So traditionally, a minestrone soup is made with a tomato base. We're again combining it with some lentils, with some chickpeas and quinoa to give it an extra healthy kick to it. Because again, health is wealth. So I'm just cutting around the stem and cutting up the tomatoes in the chunks. You can always wash your hands before you cook. I did that before I started the video. And again, I'm just cutting the tomato up. I'm not cutting it into little pieces because again, I want it to turn into a liquid. I want it to turn into that soup. You could make tomato sauce like this as well. If I was going to make this into tomato sauce, I wouldn't use as much of the oil to make it into a liquid. So I'm being mindful of that. Again, I am mindfully cutting off the stems. And you can hear Lily. Lily always knows when there's food. You might hear her pause or her collar because Lily always knows when I'm cooking. If she could have any kind of food, she would. So here are the tomatoes that I cut so far. And again, I washed them ahead of time. And then I'm just going to put them in our oil here. So I actually cut it on this one because I see a little bit of stem there. Okay, and then I'm going to continue to cut up these tomatoes. Again, I'm doing them in chunks. You could research different, ways to, make a tomato-based soup. Again, there's no right or wrong way. Do what makes you feel comfortable. And this is how my grandma's taught me how to cook. So that is the way that I am cutting up these tomatoes. Again, I'm noticing the texture. It's a soft and juicy because the ripened ones, they just won't taste as sweet, but they might. Unripened fruit can sometimes taste bitter or just like doesn't taste that great. So that's why I am purposely choosing the ones that look and feel like they're ready to be cooked. Because sometimes with tomatoes, if you leave them out for too long, they start to rot and they start to get like rotten. So, just being aware of that, and then they might start to smell. So again, just practicing mindfulness. You can notice the difference in color and texture of the different tomatoes. You can see just by looking here the difference. Again, these are fresh organic tomatoes right from the backyard. And I'm gonna add one more. And then I'm going to clean this off to prepare for our next set of vegetables to cut up. Again, this takes time. This takes patience, right, to cook our food. So I'm gonna pour this in the pot, frying pan here. And you can see, this is what the tomatoes will start with. And they're gonna change color, they're gonna change shape once they start to cook. And of course, I'm also going to add the spices as well, but I'm gonna wait till all of the veggies are in the frying pan. So since there's so many tomatoes, we don't have enough room for the other vegetables. So what I'm going to do is get another pan. So I can see that our pasta is ready. So when I drain this in the colander, I'll put the macaroni to the side and then get another frying pan so that we can saute our other vegetables. And then once these tomatoes shrink down, we'll be able to mix them together. So sometimes that happens when you're cooking. You have to be flexible, just like yoga, because there's no way I'll be able to fit the other vegetables without it overflowing. So we're gonna add the salt, some pepper, some turmeric. We're gonna add the spices to the tomato base. And then, like I said, we're gonna cut up the next set of veggies so they can start to cook, because we're gonna put all our ingredients together, but it takes time to make our soup. So I have washed my vegetables. I had to wash the carrots and the onions outside because they're really grown in the dirt. So the dirt was so thick that I would clog up my sink. So I had to be really mindful about that. I also noticed the quinoa, the lentils, and the macaroni were done. So I removed them into their own bowls, and I'll show everyone in just a few minutes because I want the other vegetables to start to saute. I also cut up an onion to add to the tomatoes, and I forgot onions make you cry. So I was tearing. So you might see me tear up when I cut some more onions. And I moved our tomato sauce, or what's going to be our soup base, to the back burner. So it's coming together wonderfully. And I have another frying pan for the other vegetables, as that's not ready yet. And once they shrink more and it's more of a liquid, I'm going to put all of the ingredients in a bigger soup pot so that it all mixes together. So I'm going to start again, noticing mindfulness, the different shapes, the different textures of the peppers. And again, I'm going to cut pepper. Bell peppers, again, you always have to cut the middle part out, all the seeds. Bell peppers are great if you were to make stuffed peppers, where you could do it with rice, you could do it with meat, you could do it with tofu, or anything that you like. I've also stuffed peppers with quinoa. I'm just washing out the seeds here of the bell pepper. Again, I'm not sure what this pepper is called, but again, I'm cutting that, and then I'm going to take out the inside so the seeds come out, because we don't, it's okay to eat the seeds, but they're not as tasty. So again, I'm gonna wash out to make sure I got all the seeds out. And then I'm gonna do that with my last pepper as I cut the top off. Again, there's not as many seeds, but there's still seeds though, that we are going to again rinse out. And I'm also again going to use the top part so we don't waste, but I'm going to cut up now our pepper for our vegetable soup with using pretty much all of the vegetables are grown in my backyard, as it's a full organic garden. So that means there's no pesticides, there's no chemicals, because sometimes our fruits and our vegetables, they do have that. So again, you know, the next time you go to the grocery store, just being aware. That's why it's always important to, you know, wash our vegetables before we cook them, before we eat them, so that it's, you know, we're not poisoning ourselves, right? Because again, we are what we eat, so we want to be mindful. So again, I'm just cutting up the peppers. I am going to make them a little bit smaller, but one step at a time, one breath at a time. I'm being careful so I don't cut my finger, because again, I'm using a very sharp knife. I just have to cut off a little at a time. Again, you know, you could add any vegetable that you like. I happen to love all these vegetables, so I'm adding them in. But of course, if I didn't like peppers, I wouldn't add peppers. You know, you could add in any kind of frozen veggie. You could add in broccoli, you could add in cauliflower, you could add in peas or corn. So again, I'm just using the bounty of produce that my dad grew. And I don't take credit for the growing process. I just take credit for the eating and cooking with it. So I am grateful that, you know, I'm able to just go to my backyard to get some veggies that are very fresh. And again, knowing that I'm cooking it with care, I'm cooking it with compassion. So again, this is a yoga practice, a tasty yoga practice, where we're able to be present with our food and the whole cooking experience, you know, because again, yoga is so much more than all of our poses that we do. It's more important the yoga we practice off our mat than the yoga that we practice on our mat. So I'm gonna cut up all these peppers and then show you the final product of our peppers. Again, I cut around the stems, so I'm gonna throw those out. And here we have our peppers that, again, once they're sauteed, they kind of shrivel up. Their color will change as well. So that's the first vegetable. And again, I have on the stove, I mixed the ghee, which is clarified butter. You can find that at Aldi. That's where I buy my ghee, but you could find it at, you know, Stop and Shop, ShopRite, Fine Fare. I also added in the coconut avocado ghee alternative and the sunflower oil. So again, it's going to have extra flavor. All the flavors are going to come together. Of course, if you didn't have all those, you could use any carrier oil of your choice. So I'm just going to mix this around, and it's on a, I'm going to put it on a lower flame while it heats up. And again, our tomato base over here, our soup is getting more of a liquid. The tomatoes are starting to soften. The next vegetable that I'm going to cut is the eggplant. I have to be really careful with the top because it's really prickly and I don't want to cut myself. So I'll show you how I cut that when I'm done. But again, I'm going to take my eggplant. Again, practicing mindfulness, noticing what it looks like. You might be familiar with eggplant as eggplant parmesan. where you could bread and fry the eggplant. So it's almost like chicken nuggets, but as a vegetable. That's one common way, but I love to eat eggplant just by sauteing it in some carrier oil and adding some of my spices to it. I like to add the salt, the pepper, the turmeric, some ginger, some cumin, and there are seeds in this. And again, because it's a thick vegetable, I have to be really careful with how I am cutting it because I don't want to cut my finger off. So I need to make sure that I'm present, that I'm aware of what I'm doing, especially when it's a vegetable that's a little harder to cut. So I usually cut it into a circle and then I cut it down into smaller pieces. And especially in a soup, I want it a little smaller, but we're gonna do the best we can. So fingers don't cut. And remember, I have a couple different types of eggplant. So I'm gonna add in the variety. And with this piece, I might throw out because it kind of looks like there's a bug in it. So we won't use that. That's the other thing, you know, always looking at your food because when you pick them fresh, sometimes there might be, you know, a bug or an ant. I know the ants really like to eat the fresh vegetables. Besides, like I said, there's a groundhog back in the backyard and a bunny. So everyone who loves the Zambrano produce here. And let's cut around that. Not use that. And then how I cut this part, because there's still a lot of the eggplant meat on it, but if I hold it, I'm gonna hurt myself. So I have to kind of cut it in these triangle forms. So as you can see, it's like a triangle. I'm cutting it so that again, I don't, just quickly. And this eggplant is very strong. So that's how I cut around eggplants. And then again, I kind of look over everything. Again, I see another like picky piece. So I'm just gonna throw it out. And I'm just cutting up the chunks to make them a little bit smaller. And here is the cut up eggplants. Again, we can see it does have some seeds to it. And again, this is all, the color is going to change once it starts to cook. So we're going to add this to our peppers. And again, it's starting to get full of vegetables. So I'm only going to add in just one carrot and one onion because if I add any more, I really won't have any space. So again, just like in yoga, we create space. We are doing the same thing here. I'm just going to add a little bit more sunflower oil to this. And then here we have our carrot. Again, homegrown. And I'm gonna cut the stem. Cut that off. And I'm gonna cut the carrot into these little pieces. And I can practice mindfulness by noticing the color. I didn't like the end part, there's not much left to it, so I'll just throw that out again with our long stem. In the other carrots that I had picked the other day, which are that yellow color, I'm gonna just wash off one more time. And again, just practicing mindfulness, noticing what is similar with these, what is different. And right away, one is orange, one is yellow. And they smell super, super fresh. This is the first year that my dad grew carrots. We didn't grow carrots last year, so I myself am impressed and amazed with, and then we have two smaller ones, the carrots. And this whole stem, look at it, almost looks like hair, just for that little carrot, right? So I'm gonna cut off the stem. Cut off the end part. So all that, right, for that carrot. So much goes in, right, to Mother Nature as things grow. And then our other carrot, we'll cut stem off. And then we will cut up the onions so that we can throw out the stem. And remember, carrots are root vegetables, so they grow in the earth. Carrots have the beta carotene, so they help our eyes so we can see better. They help our skin to stay nourished and healthy. So check out all of our carrots here. Again, I'm just throwing out the stems or the end pieces. And here are the homegrown carrots. So we have the orange or the yellowish color and the orange ones. And of course, you could just have carrots as a healthy snack. You can have it with hummus. Remember, you can make homemade hummus by mixing chickpeas together and also tahini. Tahini are sesame seeds that are all blended together. So that's tahini. So this is what hummus comes from. Again, we're just going to have the actual chickpeas in our soup. We're not going to blend them, but hummus you can make by putting that in a blender, again, adding some olive oil and then whatever spices you like, and you can create your own homemade hummus. Sometimes you have carrots with peanut butter, maybe you have it with ranch dressing or any kind of your favorite salad dressings. You can add carrots to a salad. So, or you can cook them in boiling water so they get a little softer. So there's many different ways you can cook your carrots. And then we're gonna add a little bit more oil because I see things are still a little dry. And the last thing we're gonna add in here is the spices. And I just wanna bring the zoom over a little closer to the tomato sauce because you will see you will see that it's turning into the soup. So see how it's all coming together, how the tomatoes are changing. So they're still going to transform, but that's how our soup, our tomato-based soup is transforming. So now I'm going to cut the onion. So I have an onion here I cleaned off. Onions sometimes make you cry. It's just because they're so strong. So again, that might happen because it happened just a few moments ago when I was cutting the onions that I cut for the tomatoes. I love onions. You can never have enough onions. And again, onions, they help us with our immunity, with staying healthy. So before I cut them any smaller, I'll show you a little closer. The onions look like. So again, homegrown onions. I had to peel a layer off, and then I'm going to continue to cut them. They say if you chew gum, you won't tear up. I don't really have gum, but I remember my grandma telling me that. So I wish I had some gum right now, because again, these are strong. So I'm cutting up the onions, and I'm also going to cut some that I'm going to use for the pesto, because I'm still going to blend together the fresh basil, some of the ground up almonds, and some olive oil and some spices, put it in the blender to make the pesto, which is almost like a green pasta sauce. And adding in the onions always, just gives it so much flavor. So I can also cut up some onions for that, right? There's a lot of layers to the onion. So we can use nature as an example that, as humans, we have a lot of layers to us. Peel them open through the practice of yoga to discover our true self. And I feel my eyes are starting to tear. Oh, this is strong. And I have to be so careful how to, oh man, that's really strong. I know, can you see me tearing? Oh, my eyes, it's really strong. Oh, I gotta be careful cutting so again I don't cut myself. And onions, they give you a good cry, right? So again, I'm just chopping up the onions because again, I don't want to hurt myself. And oh boy. Well, since I'm crying now, I'm just gonna cut them all and then save some for the pesto. So I'm gonna cut again another one. And it's okay to cry, absolutely. It's important to feel your feelings. This is a cooking cry, right? Tears, happy tears. Again, just being mindful. And actually, we'll cut that last one. We'll save a little bit for the pesto. All right, so here's our fresh cut onions that my eyes, I don't know if you can see, they are tearing, and I don't want to touch my eyes because then it's gonna sting even more. So here are the onions that made me cry, fresh from the garden. So again, I'm not going to add all of these in because I'm going to save some for our basil, but I'm going to add a handful of the onions to our veggie stir fry. And I start to peel them apart so that they're not all clumped together. And poof, my eyes, they had a good cry right there. Again, it's just a natural, your body's natural reaction to the potency of the onion. And again, onions are really good for our body, for staying healthy, for immunity, for digestion. So there's a lot of power to the onions here. So what I'm going to do after I peel some of these just like this. A little bit more. Save some. Oops, I dropped some. I'm going to wash those off. And then I'm going to mix these up. So just to show you, all of the cut veggies are in the stir fry. And the next thing I'm going to do is add the spices to it so it has more flavor. So now I'm going to add in the spices. So I'm going to start with some salt. Here is the Himalayan sea salt, again, which helps our lungs to breathe better. I'm going to add in some pepper. And again, I can use the essential oils, but I'm going to add them in when it's more of a liquid. So I'm going to add in the black pepper, the cumin, the ginger, once it's more of a liquid base, because again, there's so many vegetables in this right now that I'm afraid it all won't get to soak it up. So I'm sprinkling in the turmeric. Always add turmeric with black pepper, which again helps our body with digestion and just staying healthy with our immunity. I'm adding in the cumin. Sometimes it takes a little power. Out. And I think that was all my spices, and I got some ginger in there too. Ginger. And yeah, ginger in. Again, this is what I like. You don't have to put as much. You can put less. Remember, you can always add more flavor. So sometimes less is more. And be mindful of who you're cooking for. And I'm just going to mix up the spices and the veggies, and it's on a low flame. So again, they can all start to saute and come together. So while these are on the stove, I am going to use the can opener to open our beans and our chickpeas. So I'll show you what they look like after I'm going to use the can opener to open our beans and our chickpeas. Again, more plant protein. And then I'm going to show you the cooked pasta, the ditalini macaroni, the quinoa, and the lentils. And then we're going to mix all of these together in a pot so we can transfer the soup part to it, and everything's going to come together. All right, so I'm going to open this with the can opener and then show you the final product. So now I'm going to show you the macaroni, the lentils, and the quinoa, and the kidney beans and the chickpeas, because we're going to put them all in our big pot, and then we're going to transfer our liquid to here so that it's a bigger pot. And then I can also transfer my vegetables to a bigger container because I realize they're starting to overflow. So here is the pasta. Again, practicing mindfulness, noticing the difference between, now this is the cooked pasta and uncooked pasta. This is the final product of the quinoa, which again is a grain Again, good plant protein, again, helps our body with digestion. And then we have our lentils. Again, noticing how the color and the shapes have changed. And then these are the kidney beans and the chickpeas. So they're still in the colander because I had to drain them, because when you emptied them from the can, they were in that liquid. So I washed them off and I mixed them up here in the colander. So now I'm going to pour these ingredients into the pot. So I'm not going to put all of it in because that's going to be a lot, but I'm going to put enough in so then I can make another meal with everything. So I'm going to scoop in. Here comes the scoop in the pasta. I'm going to scoop in the quinoa. I'm going to scoop in the lentils. And I'm going to pour in some of the beans and the chickpeas. And then I'm going to mix this up before I add in the tomato sauce or the soup base that's still turning into a liquid, just so you can see the before and then after. So now I put all of those ingredients in our pot. And then next I'm going to add in the tomato sauce or the soup base, and then continue to stir fry the other vegetables. So I transferred the tomato broth into the pot because I needed 2 hands. I wouldn't be able to bring the computer closer because I didn't want to spill that. But just to show you, and this is going to continue to cook, but right in here is all of the soup from the tomato, the broth, and it's still going to cook. All those chunks of tomatoes are still going to cook. And then the last thing I'm going to add in are the other vegetables. And I'm going to keep this on the stove for another hour. And again, I can add in more of the essential oils, the oils that I'm going to add into this, again, to make it a soup. I'm going to add in the celery seed. I'm going to add in some more cumin. I will add in some more ginger, some more black pepper, and just a drop of the basil to give it more flavor. And then it will all come together as a healthy minestrone vegetable lentil soup with all the ingredients are organic from my garden. So homegrown, because gardening can be a mindfulness practice. So as our veggies are still stir frying, our pot is still simmering, I'm going to show us how we're going to make our basil pesto. And then by the time that's done, this should be ready to add in. So that is still going on there. So I have the basil leaves that I picked again from my backyard garden. And I'm going to mix this with the cut up onions from my garden. I'm going to add in a little bit of sunflower oil. I'm going to add in the almond meal, which are almonds that are all just chopped up, because again, pestos usually have a nutty flavor. So you can see that is what almond meal looks like, just grinded up almonds. And then you can add in a cheese. I like to eat dairy-free cheese, so I'm going to use, again, sticking with almond, our almond style shreds. It's again mozzarella made from almonds. And then I'm also going to mindfully add in the essential oil. So I'm going to add in black pepper, some ginger, a little bit of cumin, and the celery seed, we're going to add it to our soup. And I'm also going to add just a drop of basil to give it some extra freshness. So I'm going to wash these, and then we're going to put all these ingredients in the blender to blend to make a homemade pasta or pesto for your pasta, as I've saved the other pasta, the ditalini, to pour on this. So you can see one way you could eat your pesto. You could even put it on a piece of bread. There's so many different ways you can try pesto. I first had pesto when I went to Italy, when I studied abroad in Siena. So pesto to me always reminds me of my study abroad experience. So first I'm gonna add in the basil. And basil can look like any green vegetable. So first I add in the basil. Again, I'm being mindful of my hands. Next, I'm gonna add in some of the onion to give it that oniony flavor. And sometimes you have to move the peels. The rest of that I'm gonna add into the stir fry that I had extra eggplant, so I started another pan so I wouldn't waste the extra eggplant, but that definitely added in there. Then I'm gonna add in some sunflower oil. Again, I'm just doing this as my own recipe. You can research different ways to make pesto. Again, I'm making mine more of a dairy-free, nut-based almond pesto. You can get creative. I'm gonna pour a little bit of the almond meal in. And then I'm gonna add in some of the mozzarella shreds. Again, it looks just like mozzarella cheese, but again, it's made from almonds. Okay. Then we'll add in some of the Himalayan sea salt. And we will mindfully add in, so you can see what it's looking like. We are gonna add in our black pepper. So I'm gonna give it about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I get those 6 drops of black pepper. Remember, you can only cook with Young Living. Then I'm gonna add in some cumin. I'm not gonna do as many drops of cumin. I'm just gonna put in 2, 1, 2. Oops, got a little bit more because it went on the blade. I'm gonna add just a drop of ginger. Ginger can be really strong, so I'm just gonna add a drop of ginger. And then again, this is the basil essential oil. This is how oils are made. So we're gonna add in just another drop or 2 of the essential oil basil. And then I'm also gonna add in some garlic powder. If you had fresh garlic, you could cut up fresh garlic, but I'm using the fresh onion. So again, do what you like. I'm gonna add in a little bit of turmeric. I like to add turmeric to everything. Again, turmeric is that yellow color. And then I know I added the essential oil of black pepper, but I'm also gonna add in the sprinkled form. All right, so those are all of the ingredients. As you can see, they're all mixed together, how you make pesto from basil that we'll put on our pasta. And I'm gonna put the lid on, blend it up, and then we're gonna check out how our homemade fresh pesto is. So now I have the lid securely on. I'm gonna hit the button to blend our pesto up. So if you're sensitive to sound, just close your ears. Here we go. This is making our fresh basil pesto for our pasta. Stop, just check in on it. I might need to mix it around a little bit. As you can see, it Kind of splatters everywhere. I didn't have as much basil because of all the rain. It kind of dried out the basil. So hopefully the basil, once you pick it, it grows right back. So hopefully it'll come back a little healthier, but you can't control Mother Nature, you know? So we're gonna blend this up. Again, it's like a green pasta sauce. And then we're going to check in on it again. Needs a little bit more to come together. Make sure the lid is on. It smells delicious. I can smell all the oils and the herbs in our almond-based pesto. And then I'm going to stop. Before we check in on that, I want you to see how the vegetables have been turning out. So I'm about to put that in the pot. This is the one with the onions, the peppers, the eggplant, the carrots. The other one is just some extra eggplants. And then look how our soup has been turning out. So I'm going to transport that to the pot, mix it all together, and we have our healthy minestrone vegetable lentil soup. Before I pour this out, you can see the pesto, it turned into the sauce. So it became this thick paste. If I didn't want it as thick, I could, add more oil to, water it down. I'm sure you can even add in some water, but pesto is this green paste, again, made from the basil plant. And again, you can look up different recipes to make your own. And I'm now going to show you what the soup looks like as I moved it to the big pot. So this will all come together. I know it's a little hard to see because I don't want to spill this, but I transported the other veggies to this. And now I'll scoop it out in a bowl so you can see our final products. And for the final touch of our healthy soup, we will add in a drop of the celery seed, because that was one vegetable that I did not have in my garden. So I add a drop of the celery seed, and I can even put a drop of the black pepper, just one drop. And then I can use my spoon to mix it all up. And again, you can practice mindfulness, see what do you notice, which vegetables do you notice, And here are our final products. We have our pesto pasta, and we have our minestrone soup. Again, it's really hot. As you can see, it's steaming. That it's hard to show you. I can try to move the camera for you so you can see our final product of our mindfulness with cooking and using the herbs from my garden. So you can practice mindfulness in a healthy way. Again, use what you have, cook with love, cook with care, and cooking is yoga. This is our yoga food. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you try it out, and feel free to share in our Google Classroom if you try out this recipe, or if you try out another recipe. You can also share your favorite recipes to make, share if you have a garden. But I'd love to hear what you've been cooking and creating in your kitchen. Have a great Green Wave day. Namaste.